The closet warning. The night was quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves outside my bedroom window. I lay in bed, my eyes heavy with exhaustion as I tried to drift off to sleep. But no matter how hard I tried, the sense of unease that had settled over me refused to be ignored. I glanced towards the closet, where my dog, Max, lay curled up on the floor, his eyes fixed on the closed door as he growled softly under his breath. It had become a nightly ritual, the growling, the barking, the frantic scratching at the door as if he were trying to warn me of some unseen danger lurking within. I sighed and turned away, trying to ignore the sense of dread that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. Max had always been a nervous dog, prone to barking at shadows and imaginary threats. But lately, his behavior had grown more erratic, more frantic, as if he sensed something that I could not. I tried to push the thought from my mind, to tell myself that it was just my imagination running wild in the darkness of the night. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong, that Max's warnings were not to be ignored. And then, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard it, the sound of scratching at the closet door, followed by a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest as I listened to the sound, trying to make sense of the noise that echoed through the silent darkness. I glanced towards the closet, my pulse quickening as I saw Max standing before it, his hackles raised and his teeth bared in a silent snarl. He barked once, twice, 3 times, his voice filled with a sense of urgency that sent a chill racing down my spine. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the closet door as I debated whether to heed Max's warnings or dismiss them as the product of an overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew that I could not ignore the sense of unease that had settled over me, that I had to confront whatever lay within the closet. With a trembling hand, I reached for the door handle and pulled it open, the hinges creaking softly in protest as the door swung inward to reveal the darkness beyond. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared into the depths of the closet, half expecting to see some monstrous creature lurking within. But to my surprise, the closet was empty, the darkness swallowing the space like a gaping maw. I frowned in confusion, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Had Max been barking at nothing all along? Or was there something else at play, something beyond my understanding? I stepped forward, my senses on high alert as I searched the closet for any sign of what could have caused Max's agitation. And then, just as I was about to give up hope, I saw it. A glint of light caught my eye, drawing my attention to a small object lying on the floor of the closet. I knelt down and picked it up, my hands trembling as I realized what it was, an old photograph of myself, taken when I was just a child. I frowned as I studied the image, a sense of unease settling over me as I noticed the words written on the back in faded ink, "Don't look behind you." My breath caught in my throat as I read the words, a chill racing down my spine as I realized the implications of what I had found. Who had left the photograph in my closet? And what did they mean by their ominous warning? I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, watching and waiting in the darkness. But there was nothing, only the empty silence of the night, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves outside the window. I stood there in the darkness, the weight of the photograph heavy in my hand as I tried to make sense of what I had found. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me, lurking just out of sight in the shadows. I glanced towards the closet, a sense of dread pooling in the pit of my stomach as I realized that whatever had left the photograph behind could still be lurking within its depths. I reached out and closed the closet door, the sound of its latch clicking shut echoing through the empty room. I lay back down in bed, the events of the night replaying in my mind as I struggled to find sleep. And then, just as I felt myself drifting into slumber, I heard it, the sound of scratching at the closet door, followed by a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I listened to the sound, trying to make sense of the noise that echoed through the silent room. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, the scratching stopped, replaced by a soft whisper that seemed to fill the room. "Don't look behind you," the voice whispered, its words sending a chill racing down my spine as I realized that I was not alone, that something was lurking in the dark. Story 2. Echoes of Sorrow. The night was still, the silence of our home broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. I lay in bed, my thoughts drifting as I struggled to find sleep in the oppressive darkness. And then, amidst the quiet, I heard it, the soft sound of someone crying. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen. The cries grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the empty halls of our home like a mournful lament. I glanced towards the bathroom, a sense of dread pooling in the pit of my stomach as I realized where the sound was coming from. I pushed back the covers and rose from bed, the floor cold beneath my bare feet as I made my way towards the bathroom door. The cries grew louder with each step, filling the air with a sense of sorrow that seemed to seep into my very bones. I reached for the door handle, my hand trembling as I pushed it open and stepped inside. And there, bathed in the soft glow of the nightlight, stood my wife, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her hands. My heart broke at the sight of her pain, and without hesitation, I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close in a silent embrace. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, my voice soft with concern. But she didn't respond, her sobs growing louder as she buried her face against my chest. I held her tighter, trying to offer what comfort I could in the face of her overwhelming grief. But even as I held her, a sense of unease settled over me, as if something were lurking in the shadows, watching and waiting. After what felt like an eternity, my wife's sobs began to subside, her breathing slowing as she drifted into an uneasy sleep. I watched over her for a moment, a sense of protectiveness swelling within me as I vowed to do whatever it took to keep her safe from whatever darkness haunted her dreams. I gently extricated myself from her embrace and made my way back to our bedroom. The darkness seemed to press in around me, suffocating and oppressive as I lay back down in bed, my thoughts swirling with 1,000 unanswered questions. I tried to find sleep in the silence of the night, but the memory of my wife's tears lingered like a specter in the darkness, haunting my every thought. And then, just as I felt myself drifting into slumber, I heard it, the sound of someone crying. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat up, the room bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. I glanced towards the bathroom, a sense of dread knotting in the pit of my stomach as I realized that the cries were coming from there once again. I rose from bed, the floor cold beneath my feet as I made my way towards the bathroom door. The cries grew louder with each step, filling the air with a sense of sorrow that seemed to weigh me down like a leaden weight. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared to face whatever horrors awaited me within. But to my surprise, the bathroom was empty, the only sound the faint trickle of water from the faucet. I frowned in confusion, my senses on high alert as I scanned the room for any sign of what could have caused the cries. But there was nothing, only the empty silence of the night, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioner. And then, just as I was about to leave, I heard it, the sound of someone crying, echoing through the darkness like a mournful lament. I froze, my blood running cold as I realized that the cries were coming from behind me. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest as I searched the darkness for the source of the cries. But there was nothing, only the empty room, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. I stepped forward, my senses on high alert as I scanned the room for any sign of what could be causing the cries. And then, just as I was about to give up hope, I saw it, a figure standing in the corner of the room, its form shrouded in shadow. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I stared at the figure, unable to tear my eyes away from its dark and twisted form. It seemed to flicker in and out of existence, like a ghostly apparition that defied explanation. I tried to speak, to call out and demand answers, but no sound escaped my lips. I could only watch in terror as the figure drew closer, its movements slow and deliberate as it reached out towards me with gnarled and twisted hands. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, the figure vanished, disappearing into the darkness as suddenly as it had appeared. I stood there, shaking and trembling, until the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.